There we go. And then we'll hand over to Ra to tell us a little bit about how Don't Look Left came around and how the collaboration across the world worked.
Thank you, Isabel. Yes, so my name's Rob Page. I run Comma Press. Comma Press is a short story specialist. It specializes in short story, and it's been short stories. It's been publishing and commissioning short fiction in translation for over 20 years. And one of the many things that we do is we have a Book of the City series, which is just an anthology series which puts together short stories from different cities around the world. Is edited by somebody who's obviously very familiar and embedded in that literary culture. And one of the many books, we've had like 27, 28 editions of this series so far. And in 2014, we did the Book of Gaza. And this was edited by Atef Abu Saif, who at the time was a writer, a lecturer. He has two strengths, really, kind of literary fiction and sort of political science. And he'd done an event with Manchester Literature Festival, which sort of connected with ours in 2009. So we knew him. We managed to bring him over for a series of events in 2014 for this book. We weren't able to bring over another writer, Abdullah Taye, who was supposed to come over because he didn't get I think it was a combination of not being able to get a British visa, and also the Rafah border was closed at the time. So we brought Atef over, and he then did a small tour with us, including Hay and London, Manchester. And then when a few days after he got back, this was summer 2014, the 2014 war started, which was, to call it a war is completely inaccurate. It was a kind of one-sided onslaught from Israel, killing over 2,000 people. Whilst this was going on, I was in touch with several of the writers and contributors from the book, just trying to keep in touch with them, seeing if they were okay. And they were giving sort of sharing snippets of how they survived in a war, which for them by then had become a regular kind of a regular thing. It involved simple things like moving your mattress to the middle of the apartment, away from all the windows, to avoid flying glass and things like that. So it's just details, strange little details about that people had got used to from surviving, from living through so many wars. So so some of the writers started writing kind of longer pieces at my request, because I was sharing these little details on social media. And Atef in particular started writing a daily diary. We were then able to get, it was extremely powerful kind of observations about the kind of normality of what was going on, how people had acclimatized and adapted, and it felt like it was not like any other coverage that I had seen about that war. You can watch hours and hours of TV footage, and you begin to sort of learn the language of TV coverage, and it's sort of designed to separate you from sympathizing. You see it as something which happens to other people. You see it through the lens, through the sort of the turret of the airplane. You see it from a distance, and you see people mourning at a distance, and you see people angry at a distance, and you see rubble, just endless rubble that you can't really relate to or connect to at home. When you're reading somebody's diary, you're in the head of the person who lives there, and for whom this city is a normal, beautiful, contradictory city like any other city. And you see it from a domestic point of view. You see it from inside the apartments, from within the relationships, within the neighborhood. You see, you're basically experiencing a totally different war. Anyway, Atef's diary of that war in 2014 became. Eventually, we collected it together for this book, which was The Drone Eats With Me. And we had an intro by Noam Chomsky, individual pieces from that diary where we got into various newspapers, the Sunday Times and The Guardian and Slate and New York Times ultimately. And then we collected them together a year later for that diary. I was actually on holiday in Egypt at the time, so not very far away, but I was spending every day just cleaning up these diaries and ferrying them to other newspapers. And it was a very, very strange kind of time and experience. And at the best of time, power in Gaza is limited, so you'll have 8 hours on, 8 hours off, and people have learned because the power station was bombed many years ago, and it's sort of controlled by the Israelis. So a lot of the time, I didn't know if Atef was just in a blackout. A lot of the time, I didn't know at the time if he was alive or dead, and sometimes he would disappear for several days. A lot of things happened in his life after that. He became more politically involved. In 2018, he became like around about then he became spokesman for Fatah, which is obviously the dominated party in the West Bank, but kind of not at all in the Gaza Strip. And he became politically involved in various movements. And at one point, at 2 points, he was beaten up by Hamas, kind of masked Hamas militia and militias. And the second time, he was beaten very, very badly, and he was kind of taken to a hospital in Ramallah in the West Bank. And as he recovered, he was visited by President Mahmoud Abbas, president of the PA and Fatah in the West Bank, and he became kind of a bit of a symbol of the tension and representative of Fatah in that tension. And he was soon after appointed the Minister of Culture. So he then slowly moved his family to the West Bank. He'd grown up and spent his whole life in Gaza, apart from when he studied abroad. But he relocated his family to the West Bank. And then when the current genocide started, a few days after October the 7th, I contacted him. I didn't realize he was in Gaza. He just visited a couple of days before with his family, with his son, sorry, a 15-year-old son, to visit his family. So he was caught there, even though he doesn't live there. And it was deja vu. It was like Groundhog Day again. He was sending me extracts, and I said, "Yeah, okay, well, we're doing this again." And it was obvious from very early on that this was not going to be like 2014. Although 2014 was pretty unprecedented and was the biggest war to date, this was going to be 10 times bigger, or more than 10 times bigger. So what had happened in 2014 with Drone Eats with me is the pieces that we'd got into newspapers were seen by other journalists and translators in other languages, and a key player in that was an activist, journalist, whatever you want to call a translator, called Ursula Casagrande, who edits or co-edits a magazine called Global Rights Magazine, and she also works as a journalist for lots of other places. She speaks 7 different languages. She's originally from Italy. She lives in the Basque Country and sometimes half the year in Cuba. She speaks, as I say, Spanish, Italian, etc., a bit of Kurdish. And she helped me get some of those pieces into Spanish at the time. And then, so with this genocide, she put me in touch with lots of Spanish language outlets, potential Spanish language outlets, Italian ones, and through her and through networks that were building up at the time, and also I have to say through Rebeca, who I kind of first properly engaged with at Blackie Books through this conference, actually Green Book Fair last year. I reached out to some publishers, and then very, very quickly, lots of publishers around the world. We're now on 15 different territories. Took it up. It's something that's not being covered. Obviously, it goes without saying that the reporting is incredibly biased. The reporting is so biased, it's almost verbatim Israeli press release material. Lies and spins and half-truths and false framing and false balance are continually kind of repeated by all of the mainstream media outlets. On October 10th, BBC Newsnight, just as an example, started referring to Hamas as ISIS-like, and Kirsty Walk, the presenter of Newsnight, used the phrase ISIS-like at least 5 or 6 times, to the extent where she at one point went to the Labour Party conference and asked Labour Party Shadow Cabinet Minister Hilary Benn, do you agree that they're ISIS-like? Would you say they're ISIS-like? Just trying to equate just kind of stupid simplifications in people's minds, and not allowing people to regard any of the aspects of what's going on in Gaza, just not allowing them to understand them as anything other than sort of absolute terrorist, demons, and not allowing for any kind of nuanced understanding of the context in which October the 7th happened, and not really allowing for any kind of sympathy with ordinary Palestinian people, not allowing for any sympathy for an idea that occupation should be resisted. And it was, it's the most astonishing period of propaganda and delusional propaganda I've ever known. Just to give a bit of a sense of my personal connection with Gaza, outside of my relationship with Atef and writers, I also, as a consequence of the Book of Gaza, which we did a few years ago, bizarrely, one of the writers was visiting Manchester and brought a friend and a friend's daughter, and who's a translator, and I ended up we ended up falling in love, getting married, and Basma is the daughter I'm referring to. So my wife is Gazan, and she grew up in Gaza, and we took our kids to Gaza in 2022, which is a year and a bit before this all started, and spent a month there. So we know this. We got to know, or I got to know the city. Basma obviously knows the city like the back of her hand, and we got to know many writers, many of whom have died. The first person I met who wasn't a relative was Rifat Al-Arir, who pulled up outside my mother-in-law's house and took me around the city. And Rifat Al-Arir, is the author of the poem, the White Kite poem, which everybody knows, and was murdered on the 6th of December last year, along with hundreds of other writers, journalists, artists, etc., etc. And the night that, just as a little bit of context, the night that we learned that he had been killed, I just put a picture of Basma and Rifat on our Twitter or on one of our social medias, and we were bombarded by hundreds and hundreds, possibly thousands, of abusive messages, just for having known him, attempting to gaslight our relationship with him and gaslight us over what kind of a person he was. And yeah, we're kind of living in a split kind of universe, parallel. So we're kind of living in 2 different parallel universes, one in which this is happening, and it's, the most atrocious moment in my lifetime, and a parallel universe in which everything just carries on and people don't talk about politics and everything's hunky-dory. So this project is an attempt to kind of pierce that a little bit, and it's met with extraordinary support from the international community, and publishing community. And there's lots of stories which we should share, but I'll shut up now because I've gone on long enough.
Cheers, Ra. That was an excellent introduction to the history of you supporting Atef's work and testimony. And And now I thought it would be excellent if we could just hear briefly from all the publishers about, what you do and also why this book felt right for you to publish in your territory. So I wonder if we could start with Rebeca from Blackie Books, and then we'll go to Perpetua from Beacon Press, and then we will go to Noura Books and Dieter and Shara.
Well, hello to everybody, and thanks for doing this amazing panel. Well, as Ra has said, he read me in November last year, and he said, "Do you want to join this?" And we see it as a total yes for us. It was really urgent to do something, because we think that we saw that people want to do something about this, want to help, but hadn't found a way to do it. So we saw it as a way to provide this way of helping and say stop. So it was like a total commitment with the project for us.
Cheers, Rebeca. And welcome, Perpetua.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a publicist with Beacon Press, and we had a relationship already with Comma Press and with Ruff from being the North American publisher for The Drone Eats With Me, Atef's previous book, in 2014. And it came out with us in 2016, so the relationship had already been established, and Atef's North American Beacon Press editor, Amy Caldwell, who can't be on the panel today, reached out to me, as I had already worked with Atef on the last book, and it was all set. We are a publisher that occupies a few spaces in the publishing world in the US. We are a trade publisher, but we are also, many of our books are adopted into library curriculums, as well as scholastic curriculum, the high school, the secondary and college higher education level. And we're also mission-based, so there are plenty of projects that we will take on over the course of our lifetime that we don't anticipate or expect to have any profits from, and that are simply important, passionate projects for us to promote in order to spread awareness and to spread the word about what is within the pages of the book. And in the case of this new war diary, that became very clear, very apparent right away, that any proceeds that we collected shouldn't go to us, but should go to those who needed it the most. And so in collaboration with Comma and through some research of our own, we were able to identify 3 charities that were on the ground at the moment that we could collect the profits to send to. And that was and has been a very important aspect of our ongoing work, spreading awareness about this book and maintaining our mission as this kind of press.
I love that. Thank you. I don't think we have a number to hand, unless Ra's got it, of all the different territories and how much the book has raised for charity. But I know it's a really big figure and an amazing testament to all the publishers here. Welcome, Dieter and Noura Publishing.
Thank you, Isabel, and everyone for having me. Yeah, actually, maybe Shara, the first one who already know about how this book can be published by Noura Publishing, but it's kind of big honor for us, especially because in Noura we have the part publisher from the Mizan Group, so we are very concerned about this issue, Palestine. Maybe because of the history about Indonesia and Palestine is such a long time history. So when we knew that this book will be published, the diary will be published, becoming the book. So the project will be have a big impact for us as well. And And maybe, you know, last, I think it's about three weeks ago, we invited Atef to do like a roadshow in Indonesia, and I will share about the marketing later, maybe with you, yeah. But yeah, for today, for this in the opening, yeah, I want to share about how to we have like a very make, I don't know, it's thankful for us to let us to join you to publish this book. Maybe it's not a big it's like a one step for us to make this issue keep alive, and we hope that it will be a great in the future. We can share a lot of stories from Atef's books. Maybe for today, for this session. Thank you so much, Isabel.
Thank you very much. So I wondered if we could start by talking about how the marketing perhaps differed or was the same in various territories, and whether there were any challenges or opportunities in certain regions. So perhaps we could start with Rebeca from Blackie Books about how that marketing campaign looked, and then people can chime in if there's something different or similar in thinking, joined up thinking. So we'll begin with Rebeca. What did the marketing approach look like?
Well, we didn't know then, but today we know the key was really people talking and reacting through social networks. We send mails to magazines and newspapers and TVs and radios, and they talk about Atef's history. But the great response was from the people. Both people with a speaker, like famous people who feel the need to use this influence doing something for stopping this genocide, but mostly unknown people who could position themselves more freely in rejecting the genocide than the traditional media. So I think that the marketing was more like sharing and watching all these people feeding their social networks and reposting and following all this massive response and showing them in response of the big movement. I think this was the big K of the marketing, people sharing, which is really amazing.
Thank you, Rebeca. And in terms of this sharing, then, is that a similar experience that other people have had? Has it been that you've started some kind of initiative and then it's sort of taken a life of its own? I believe that happened at Comma because we had Voices of Resilience, which was a play inspired by the book, and then it took on a world of its own and will be a book next year as well. So similar things like that. Did that happen for you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, of course.
It happened for us at Beacon, but not within the like general reader space. As I mentioned before, a lot of our base, because so many of our books are in this realm of social justice topics, so many of our topics or so many of our books will be adopted into coursework, will be sought after by local booksellers and also by librarians who understand their patrons and constituents well, and who wish to expose their constituents to certain types of print media. So it was within those spaces by using the databases that we already have, the contacts and connections that we have, and expanding those, that we could include information about the book in our newsletters and in our in-house newsletters that did hit consumers, but also booksellers, librarians, and academics. And we also we have an additional interesting relationship, which is that our press is a department of the Unitarian Universalist Association, a religious organization that's primarily based in the US. So that religious organization is very progressive in its ideals and in its mission statement. And so there's already a pre-existing base of thousands of UU practicants who have their own publication where we could also spread this as a moral matter. And the book was adopted as a group read for the congregation. And so while we didn't have the same kind of like popcorn pickup that existed in the social space, more of the targeted and niche audiences that are already committed and very loud about all social issues naturally gravitated towards this book once we told them that it was a necessary and available tool for resistance, and they latched onto it immediately.
Oh, that's brilliant. It seems like they really trusted your mission, really. You know, these groups said this is the book to discuss, and they took that and ran with it. That's fantastic. I don't know, and Dita, in Indonesia, were there groups that you could tag on and say this will be your book of the year to read? Were you able to tap into them?
Okay, actually, the first time when the book is published, was on March, if I'm not mistaken. And honestly, it's not as good as we were predicted before, because we don't know why, but we this in Indonesian version, the title is A Diary of Genocide, so it's maybe it's a little bit different from the other version with Don't Look Left. But for Indonesian, it doesn't ring a bell. Like it is the book about the Palestinian issues. So it has to be. We are more to we will have to make grow the issue about this is about the genocide that has been issued in Palestinian right now in Palestine, and that's why at I think it's about in August or September we are talking in our internally. So there was one festival in Indonesia called Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, which had been a long time, I think like 20 years, and it's such a big festival. So we have like idea how to make Atef invited to Ubud Writers and Festival. That's why we think that the person of Atef will make a huge impact. So that's why from that month, the August, September, October, we are trying to do our best, and the approach is it's getting better. It's much better right now, because after we had like a discussion in three cities in Indonesia. So we had like in Bandung, Jakarta, and Bali. Is have like a huge impact, because especially in Jakarta, because we had like this panel discussion with the prominent figure of Indonesia. There are two main keynotes from this panel. So the first one is whose name is Gina Esnur. She is a writer and film director, and the second one is Anies Baswedan. He was a former Ministry of Education and Culture of Indonesia. Same with Atef, the former Minister of Cultural, and also the former Governor of Jakarta. So after this book talk in Jakarta, we have a lot of people who come up with this issue. And that's why the huge impact is for the influential person, how to make these people knew about how important this issue. And yeah, we are we know that after this book talk, and then Pak Anies Baswedan, the former minister, upload his video in his Instagram and YouTube, the view was very big. It's reached about at 800K views until now. And for the live session, I thought it's about 26K for the live discussion. And yeah, this is still we have some still some work to do, but it's like a good start for us to make this book spread the news all over Indonesia.
That's brilliant. It really sounds like you did a lot of groundwork. You know, you built a new audience, you raised awareness, and I think a lot around the world. A lot of people are finding out that festivals are such an important ecosystem for us right now, with social media perhaps not providing the right reach with the different algorithms, and the fact that, you know, we are vulnerable on social media if that social media is closed or controlled in a different way. But that direct connection that we have at a festival to discuss, especially a book like this with such complex themes, and for people to perhaps have that connection with Atef in person or just to discuss things in a group, I think is really helpful for awareness of this. Thank you, Ditte. I thought we could move on to looking at publishing books and works of a sensitive political matter, and how we might navigate potential controversies or potential censorship. So that might look different in different territories. In the UK, I feel like there has been some censorship, but theoretically, we have an open market. But I wondered, how do we balance this need for visibility of the book and the necessity of the raising awareness of the war, but also promotion of the book with the sensitivity of the subject matter? So maybe we could start with Ra or Rebecca, and then see that issue of censorship and promotion and how we balance that. Anyone can weigh in after.
Yeah, I can start. In the UK, there was with our book, there was some kind of standard traditional reviews of the book. There was a big piece by Baroness Helena Kennedy, who is a lawyer, a human rights lawyer, and advocate for Palestinian rights, in the Guardian, and there's a piece in the Irish Times, and there was kind of sort of standard kind of coverage, a little bit, not a huge amount. But the book had already been serialized in like New York Times and Washington Post and other places like that. So it felt like it was already established. It had been read by certain people, and it wasn't going to be something that would be censored or people would shut it down. But then we as you mentioned, we kind of worked with some theatre makers to put on a reading of the book, or extracts from the book, along with other poetry and music, an event called Voices Resilience. And because we had one very, very famous actor, like what Rebecca was saying with influencers, one famous actor come and read Atef's diaries, an actor called Kingsley Ben-Adir, who was in the Barbie film and was in a Bob Marley film, and is kind of up and coming Hollywood star. Because he was in it, it suddenly drew lots of attention, and then people tried to shut it down. So there were attempts by various individual Zionists and Zionist lobby groups to force the venue to cancel it, and the venue did cancel it. And then a few weeks later, lots of people protested. Artists removed their work from the gallery the art space that it was going to be in, and there were marches outside and protests outside. And lots of people threatened to remove their support for the venue and cancel their memberships. And under that enormous amount of very, very quick, rapid kind of increase in pressure, the venue then changed its position and reinstated the event exactly as it was. That kind of pressure is not, if it succeeds, it's called censorship. If it doesn't succeed, it's called, political pressure or whatever. When we tried to take the event to the Barbican in London, the same thing happened. A group called UK Lawyers for Israel tried to pressurize the Barbican into cancelling the event, just on the basis of their advertisement for the event on their website, their web copy, which said nothing at all really. But according to these lawyers, it was breaking the law. So this is what happens whenever you broach Palestine as a subject. If you fly low, like Comma is always flying low because it's a small organization. It doesn't have much reach. It's only got like a handful of staff. It's a very, very small press. It will always fly low, and nobody really cares about books. But the moment you start to attract attention, like for instance through a celebrity or large venue, then you're going to get this kind of heat. And I think the only and paradoxically, when you succeed and when you get a decision overturned, it actually helps the marketing enormously, and it brings a lot of attention to it, and it doubles the amount of attention you would have got in the first place. The only thing you can do in these situations is to try and be as strong and as clear as possible. My job as a publisher is not to edit or to frame or to sanitize what Atef or what our writers are writing, especially when it's just personal diaries. It's not political commentary. It's just describing what's happening. And it's my job is just to make it as clear and as loud as possible, and to platform it as well as I can, but it's not to frame it or to censor it. So the possibilities of censorship are everywhere. If I'm not careful, I will end up censoring him. If venues are putting on adaptations of it, if they're not careful, they'll end up censoring him. And there's an opportunity, or there's a risk of these writers being censored all the way along the line, all the way to, you know, when they're interviewed, if they're interviewed by the media or if they're reviewed. Everything is an attempt to censor them and reframe them, or justify the perspective of the host or of the newspaper that's covering them, or the media outlet. Even when we went to the Barbican, when it was reviewed, it was reviewed in the Daily Telegraph, which is a right-wing newspaper, and a very pro-Israeli newspaper. They will attempt to censor and reframe what Atef is talking about just with their headlines and their standverse and the introductory paragraph of their review. So I don't see censorship as a matter of something just being stopped from being said. It's also a question of how everything is framed and how everything is talked about, and the language people use to redefine things and reframe things. So yeah, the only thing you can do is just be as straight and honest and as strong as you possibly can. Although that brings lots of risk, it brings lots of pressure. We were advised to at one point to press take out a libel suit against some of the people that were making libelous allegations against Atef. But this is anybody that publishes in this area will be very, very, very familiar with this, and has to get used to it and has to just develop a plan for dealing with it.
Thank you, Ra. Was censorship a problem for anyone else with events, or, as Ra was saying, reframing of reviews?
Well, maybe in Indonesia there is no issue about censorship for this publication or the event, something like Ra told before. But when we are trying to make some advertisement into the Meta, Facebook, or so we can just I don't know why, but this maybe because our books there is a word genocide, so the Facebook was suspend our advertisement. But I don't know, maybe also because of the book the book story about the Palestinian. I don't know, we don't know what kind the matter of issue of the censorship from Meta. but it's kind of hard for us to make this advertisement run well. But for the issue about the censorship in Indonesia, we have not, we don't have that issue.
Just have the big tech giants as our issue then. Thank you, Tita. So I thought we could perhaps move on to, was there any joined up thinking or collaboration post-publication in terms of the marketing? So I know that generally, I think you were keeping each other quite aware with what was going on so that you could have this kind of joined up approach. But I wondered if anyone could talk about that, perhaps Perpetua or Rebeca.
We collaborated quite a bit, Ra, you and I and Amy, just coordinating and staying on top of the coverage that came through. We, in regards to the Voices of Resilience, just all of the press, positive and negative, that was surrounding it, we uplifted that on our end in order to shed light and offer progressive outlets in the US a chance to weigh in, which they did. There were writers at Yahoo and MSN and a couple of more progressive Jewish publications that had their own thoughts on those nuanced moments of censorship. And we would use our platforms to highlight any international coverage that came through. We have alerts on for any time that Atef and the book are mentioned in the media. And so we would not limit ourselves to promoting anything that came through US publications. We would promote even an announcement of, his participation in the Frankfurt Book Fair, just anything that let people know that he was on the move and that the book itself is on the move across consumer and other points of sale. And there were also some unsuccessful attempts to collaborate and just get coverage for Atef. I don't know if this is like one of your questions, but I'll just offer that it was important. It was especially important for me because I just had such, as all of us, we've just all been very personally moved and impacted by the onslaught and the genocide in Palestine and Gaza. And so knowing Atef and getting the chance to have that person-to-person connection, I did not want to force him to do anything that he wasn't willing or able to do. And there were live radio and other broadcast outlets that wanted to speak with him. And they were coming at a time when he wasn't in a position emotionally and mentally to participate. And that was important to honor as well. That was something that we couldn't have, it could have been very easy to make assumptions or just to try to reach out to him myself. And collaborating together with Ra was allowed us to just like maintain a consistent level of sensitivity around not only the book, but also the flesh and blood person behind the book.
That's really interesting and really nicely segues me on to a later question I wanted to ask all of you about what measures we take to ensure the safety, but also security, whether that's mental, but sometimes, in person, physical threat of your authors. But also others involved in the book's production and promotion, because, Perpetua said how much it has affected the team to work on this book. It's a deeply emotional read. So perhaps Rebeca could say something about just in general, it doesn't have to be on Don't Look Left as well, but ensuring the safety of your authors when we publish this kind of book, and perhaps the team as a whole, if that was relevant for yourselves.
Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, following with what Ra was saying before, I think that here in Spain, more than censorship, what we have is like a constant misinformation that comes from right-wing parties and TVs and newspapers, and of course Twitter, which has been one of the main forces support of Zionism. So our effort was to fight against this when they are trying to misinform about Atef watch or Atef life. What we try is to stop this misinformation as a way to protect the author and also the book. Because here the genocide was shown, but always like something very distant and very foreign, in which we as a country has not decision-making capacity. So the way to protect the story and the truth is to say loud and clearly that we've been led by the government, well, informing about the relationship with Israel government. So this was the first thing to do, to inform and keep the story alive every day.
Thanks, Rebeca. It sounds like across Indonesia and Spain, there's been quite a lot of almost like journalistic work, you know, to lay the grounds for the right level of understanding before the correct, or if you like, or open-ended conversations could happen, and in a space which feels, I don't know, like everyone's voices are listened to, but in respectful ways. It sounds like you've navigated a really delicate balance, and had to do a lot of groundwork on that. So thank you. Does anyone else want to speak on ensuring the protection of Atef, for example? I know when there were events, I'm sure there was a lot of safety precautions there, which perhaps you've not had to think of before as a publisher, risk assessment wise.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about that, because obviously he comes under personal attack online a lot, and his work has obviously been attacked. There were a lot of concerns about him in lots of different ways. Just to follow on from what Perpetua was saying, he lost an enormous amount during this period. He probably lost less than most people, but his sister-in-law's family was almost entirely wiped out. His friend Bilal, the head of the press house, was killed. He left the north to flee to the south, leaving his father behind, and his father was dependent on lots of medicine. And in I think it was in May, his father passed away due to lack of medicine. When he fled the north to the south, he was carrying in a wheelchair, or helping in a wheelchair, his mother-in-law. She couldn't leave with him, and he left her in a tent in Rafah. She died effectively of the cold and starvation, and she was 76 years old. So she was born during the Nakba, or the first a month or two before the Nakba. Then spent the first 5 months of her life in a tent as part of a refugee camp, and spent the last 5 weeks of her life in a tent at the age of 76. And until she died in late February. He was doing an event in Germany 2 weeks ago, and he texted me that his niece Sama, who appears in the stories, it appears in the book, was killed. It's just endless. It's just endless, and everybody that we deal with anyone that we know that is Gazan is dealing with death of friends and relatives on an almost weekly basis. And it's an incredibly difficult thing to sort of protect. I think obviously we all have artists at risk guidelines and protocols for securing our writers and protecting them. And whenever something happens that puts them under additional sort of pressure, we try to protect them on the level that they're being threatened. So, for instance, if it's online abuse or criticism, we will do things like remove their names from certain titles or books for a period of time. We'll talk to them about how we can anonymize them and reduce risk on them. We talk to them about how we talk to them about safety at events. So we've often had events with writers who have had kind of threats to their lives. So we might have additional security. We'll have security protocols for how the event is run and how to where to keep the writers and how to protect them. When Atef was in Spain, I talked to Ursula when he was in the Basque Country promoting this book. I talked to Ursula a little bit about some of the security issues that she had to consider. And fortunately, she also had the security of, she was working with like a couple of mayors and political figures, so she was able to liaise with them security-wise as well. So there's always things like that. Then there's the question of your safety and your security as an organization, and that's far less far less kind of extreme. But it's in some ways it's more complicated, and I think you have to be really, really, really careful that your concerns for your own team and your own team's kind of mental health and things like that don't actually end up being part of the censoring process. So we try to have a kind of system where, like, a lot of activist groups have an arrangement whereby if somebody doesn't feel up for taking the heat or the abuse that something like this might involve, then they kind of they're completely welcome to, and it's completely understood that everybody has different levels of tolerance, and then they step back, and we will keep the seat for them warm, but they'll just step back from the activities. They won't allow their personal kind of vulnerability to effectively censor what that group is trying to do. So it's kind of an activist approach, which is you do what you can, and everybody does the most. Everybody does what they can, but people kind of step in or step forward according to what they feel they can do. But you just have to have very open conversations about where everybody is in terms of what they're willing to do, what they're capable of doing, and what's healthy for them. And you just have to have those conversations.
That sounds like a very positive way of expressing, everyone banding together on a common project and a common goal, but everyone having different skills and, as you say, capabilities or ways of dealing with things. So the step in, step out, step back when you feel able to is a really positive approach to this, I think. I think we're going to run over very slightly. But if everyone is happy to stay for a little bit longer to answer audience questions, that would be wonderful. You can ask questions about anything that you like. It might be something about marketing politically sensitive books, or it might be something direct to this particular book and Atef's experiences. You can pop them in the chat, or you should have a little hand function. And if you can pop your hand up, so where it says react at the bottom of the screen, you can raise hand if you want to ask a question on camera, or if you pop it in the chat, I will read it out for you. Just while we're waiting see if there's any questions coming in, I wondered if someone could speak about whether there was anything that you've learned through the process of marketing this book and finding the audiences for it that you think you would take forward to another perhaps politically sensitive book that you might do in the future.
I have loads, but I don't want to dominate it.
Go on, Ra. What's your one top one?
Oh, just one.
Yeah,
I think
the biggest one.
I think it's good to, well, it's good to, in an area like this, it's good to sort of know a little bit about the law and have some conversations with some lawyer friends. Libel action, libel representation on issues of libel is the most expensive. Libel law is the most expensive, and you don't get it on legal aid or anything else like that. So you probably won't be able to afford to do anything if you're a really, really small organization on libel issues, but it's really, really good to have a sense of how it works and what it's about. And if you can just chat to, find a friend of a friend to talk to you, just to kind of equip you a little bit, that's always really, really good. I would also try to understand indemnity and how indemnity works. So in any publishing clause, you will have a clause saying, as a publisher, I indemnify you as a writer or an artist or whatever, but also as an artist, you will warranty me things. So that was never a problem with Atef, but I think when it comes to working with other people, like activists in a group or whatever, you can kind of employ them even if they're volunteers. You can have a kind of contractual relationship with them whereby you take all the risk. And I think managing that risk through an indemnity clause, like, if they warranty that they don't, they do X, Y, and Z, you can indemnify them and say, look, if we get into trouble here, this is on me. This is on us as an organization, not on you as an individual. Because I think risk is the be all and end all of this a lot of the time. Like, how do we manage risk, and how do we mitigate risk, and how do we respond to risk issues, and how do we all kind of deal with the fact that we've all got different risk tolerances? So having a clear conversation with everybody about where the risk lies, and normally the risk lies with the organization or the commissioning party, whether it's a publisher or a host venue or whatever. Risk generally lies with the largest organization involved. So just being really, really clear is super, super, super important, and making sure people understand that they're not on their own in any of this. We're all together, and there's a certain amount of protection from the organization.
Thank you, Ra. It really sounds like everyone has gone above and beyond with this book, whether it's finding the right communities or finding the right language to educate people before we tell them about the book, or really to get the press to understand the positioning of the book. Thank you so much for sharing all the criticism that we had and the way that we dealt with it. I think it's been a really vulnerable panel that people have got a lot out of. There's a lot of thank yous in the chat. I don't think we have any questions from the audience, so it doesn't actually matter. We finished on time, that we filled out our panel with our questions. So thank you so much to everyone. I will share this recording with everyone if you missed the start or the end, that will be shared with you. It's been an absolute pleasure to have all the insights from Indonesia and Spain and the US and the UK. And the book is available, Don't Look Left, by Atef Abu Saif, in 15 languages. So you can get it wherever you have your local bookshop, or direct from the publisher. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you will be able to join us later at 3 p.m. We have the art of publishing and the art of branding with Fitzcarraldo Editions. You'd be very welcome to join us. This panel is now finished, but I will pop the next link for 3 p.m. in the chat. So if anyone wants to join us, you'd be very welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. I'm glad to have been here today.
Thanks, guys.